Fourth time's a charm, right? Hey guys, welcome back to another video. It's Sarah. It's the middle of summer and I'm trying to record content for you with 4 children home. It's fun. It's super fun. Just kidding. Anyways, okay. So in this video, we're going to go over my thoughts on epidurals, Pitocin, vitamin K shot. And yeah, because this has been probably one of the most asked things that I've been getting in my inbox literally weekly. And it's such a loaded question and there's too much for me to message back to people. It's like, oh, I need a whole, so this is just the easiest way to do it. So that being said, please keep in mind, I'm not a medical professional. Please do your own research. Do not rely on the opinions of YouTubers or people you follow or coaches or your mom or your best friend or even your doctor, okay? You've got to be proactive and do your own research and figure out what's best for you, your body, your baby, and your birth. Because at the end of the day, there's no right or wrong answer. Nobody else can tell you what's best for you. Only you can make that decision. These are my personal opinions based off of my personal experience, my pregnancy, which happens to be low risk, and my prior birth experiences and the last 12 years of accumulating knowledge, I guess. So that's where I'm coming from. I might mention some things or some statistics. I will pop down below in the description some links for you to check out, some articles. I do encourage you to do that for yourself. It is super simple to go on to Google, okay? The resources that you're gonna be looking up, you wanna find unbiased resources. So a lot of the times, PubMed, the New England Journal of Health, medical studies, things like that are what you're going to be wanting to look for when you're doing your own research into these things, okay? Also, I highly recommend, it's a video. It's called The Business of Being Born. The Business of Being Born. If you have not watched that, it is a great thing to watch. I watched that when I was 19 and it kind of opened my mind up to the fact that the birth is an industry and it happens to be profitable and there are people who are profiting off of that. Okay, so just keep that in mind. All right, so let's dive into this. So first of all, if you did not know, this is how pregnant I currently am. I am 37 and a half weeks. I'm ready to pop. This is baby number 4 and we are planning a home birth, water birth. I've been coordinating care with a regular OB doctor in the hospital and a midwife. So while I'm planning a home birth, water birth, if I end up needing to or it's medically necessary, I will just go to the hospital if for any reason that happens, okay? So I'm not like hardcore one or the other. I'm a person that's kind of in the middle. I believe that doctors have their place. I don't hate doctors. I'm not like, rah, home birth is the only way to go. I'm like, no, I never wanted a home birth. I never thought I would have one ever. I was totally against them until, anyways. Okay, so that's where I'm coming from. My first baby was when I was 19, born in a hospital water birth with a midwife. Second baby was a hospital baby. I did have some complications during that labor. I had an epidural. I had a regular doctor in a military hospital. Okay. Third baby, again, water birth, hospital midwife. Fourth baby, I have an OB, I have a midwife. We're planning a home birth, water birth, but I'm open to the birth experience and flexible to whatever happens. So this is where I'm at. All right. So that's kind of my background and experience. Now, what to keep in mind when you go into deciding like, hey, do I want these things? For my labor, for my birth, what you have to understand, and that I did not realize up until like 7 years ago, I started to open my mind up a little bit more. I learned about manifesting, attracting, using, creating the experience that you desire. Okay. Do you kind of get what I'm saying? Up until that point, I had just went along with, our society or our culture's view of birth, which is birth is an emergency. There's complications, there's hemorrhaging, it's like you need to be in a hospital, you need to have an OB, it's dangerous. That's what birth is portrayed as. The screaming, the pain, the horrible, the blah. You know what? And 7 years ago, when I, learned about law of attraction and these other things, I also thought, I wonder if, even though I'd had a water birth in the past, I was like, I wonder if you could create a different experience for your pregnancy and birth. Turns out you can't, okay? So there's two different views when it comes to birth in our culture. There is, on this side, birth is an emergency. It's very medical, it's institutionalized, it's sterilized, it's dangerous, it's super painful, it's unbearable, it's traumatic. That's what a lot of birth views are centered around on birthing in a hospital. Now, not always, but a lot of it. And then you have this whole other side of things, this whole other belief system where birth is manageable. Birth doesn't even have to be painful, guys. Like, it can be super manageable. It can be something that you can look forward to. There are people who learn how to have pain-free births by taking advantage of the chemicals that your brain releases. It is so cool. Yeah, there's pain-free birth stories. Unbelievable. One of the accounts that you might want to follow would be Pain-Free Birth. I think her name's Karen Weldon. She runs that account. Another one would be Supernatural Childbirth by Jackie Mize. That one's more of like very Christian-y, very religious, very, so if you're not into that, then, but it's still a good resource. So those are two things, okay? So understanding that there's two different mindsets around birth in this country. Natural physiological birth is where the mom in a low-risk pregnancy, low-risk setting is just allowed to do her own thing. The body produces its own chemicals, which are pain relieving. She's allowed to eat. She's allowed to be intuitive, to trust her intuition. She's allowed to move around. And when it comes time, the body will actually just like push the baby out on its own. And there's very low intervention needed, okay? And there's also a lower induction rate with this mindset. Now, as far as my thoughts on the actual epidural thing, Pitocin, let's start with Pitocin. Okay, so my belief system around that is your body and your baby know when it's time to be born. And if you're trusting your body and your baby, you believe that that's going to happen. Most inductions, not all, most inductions happen because it's convenient for the mom or convenient for the doctor. You will hear the mom being like, I'm uncomfortable, I hate this, and I want to be induced. Inductions lead to interventions and a lot of the times unnecessary complications. Okay, so when you hear of like, I had to be rushed off to a C-section, most of those happen from induction and interventions. And then there are complications that can happen in a C-section. For example, one of my online mom friends, she's a fellow, influencer. She just had a baby like 3 weeks ago. She's been in the hospital with life-threatening complications for 14 days. She had to go back in for another surgery. She's got to go back for another surgery. She had a bowel obstruction, blood clots. They went back in and they missed something with the C-section, so they had to open it back up and there was a pocket of fluid. I mean, it's been terrible, okay? I'm not saying that that's how every C-section is going to go, okay? But I'm just saying that there is a higher risk when it comes to some of these interventions. Now, if it were a point where there was something endangering me or my baby, and it was a choice between, hey, look, we can try to help things along, and we can try to, induce you, or we have to do a C-section, I would obviously, in a last worst case scenario, opt for trying for an induction first. I would try everything as natural as I could, and then I would start with a very low dose of Pitocin. Low dose. What happens with Pitocin is the contractions, it's a synthetic hormone. So synthetic means that it's not coming from your body. Your body is not producing this, and it's going to produce more painful contractions than if your body were just going into labor on its own. This is where you hear of women, and plus, not only are the contractions painful, but you have to be hooked up. You're typically not able to walk around. You're not able to utilize some of these different positions. A lot of the time, sometimes they want you in bed for monitoring to make sure that the baby. And so then when you're getting monitored, you have to lay on your back with the monitor strapped to you. And a lot of the times, baby can have more, it doesn't adjust well to the Pitocin because it's such a strong contraction. That's where you hear of the baby getting de-stressed and having decelerations in the heart rate. And then they're like, whoop, whisk you off for a C-section. So Pitocin, my thoughts are I would do that as like a last resort. As far as the epidural goes, I've had an epidural in the past. It was an okay experience. With that baby, it was a good experience actually. So I went into the belief, that it was going to be a great experience. There would be no complications. It was going to be fine. I loved my epidural. I got to the hospital at midnight. I had him. I slept the whole time. I woke up. I felt some pressure. I pushed him out in 2 pushes, like 10 minutes, 2 pushes. It was a great experience and I'm thankful. However, I was numb from here down, meaning I could not move. When you have an epidural, you kind of lose that control over the birth. You're not able to change positions. Sometimes it only works, sometimes it doesn't work. You can't feel your legs. You can have side effects. Please look up side effects of the epidural because I did not realize them. Even though they happen so infrequently, they still happen. There's several moms who have become permanently paralyzed after an epidural. That freaks me out. So to me, I know that that's a very low risk chance, but it's just still is like you have to, when you're looking at these things, weigh what are the pros versus the cons, right? Like what are the benefits? Typically, you're going to get an epidural if you have an induction because the contractions from the Pitocin are so strong that you need that pain relief, that extra pain relief. So then when that happens with your epidural, your blood pressure can drop. That's what happened to me. I had to be put on oxygen. They had to pump me full of fluids. I puffed up like a balloon. I was enormous. I had swelling, and so that was with the epidural. So there was that. So there are some very real side effects that a lot of times the doctors will be like, oh, it's totally safe. My aunt, who is a nurse, after she had her epidural, she had a spinal headache. It's where the epidural, where it goes in, can like nick something and then you get a collection and it's not like a regular headache. She said it was the worst headache ever, lasted constantly, 45 days, nothing would touch it. She couldn't do the regular things because she had that spinal headache from the epidural. And then I ended up getting migraines after that. I had never had migraines prior to getting an epidural. And I don't know whatever it was with my second baby, but after I had that, I got a headache in the hospital, and that is the first time I ever really truly had like a migraine. And so I don't know. I'm not sure if that's what it was for. However, I will say that I loved sleeping. Epidurals, if you have been in natural labor for a super, super long time, things aren't progressing. Like for me, in previous pregnancies, my, my uterus was tilted like backwards. I have since been working with a prenatal chiropractor to keep my hips, aligned and everything going forwards. But my cervix and my uterus was tilted backwards. So when I was contracting, it wasn't like pushing in the right way. So in order for me to actually dilate, I had to lay on my back. So epidurals can make you lose progression. Also, the other thing with an epidural, you can't feel anything. Okay. So a lot of these chemicals that are happening and getting released in a physiological birth, there's something called the fetal ejection reflex. FER, fetal ejection response. Look it up. In a natural birth, what can happen is a lot of people think that the cervix is just open, dilating to let the baby through the birth canal. What's happening is it's actually going up and like crunching above the baby's head, and the fetal ejection reflex will push the baby out. That's what it's meant to do in a physiological birth. And some women experience no pain with this because it pushes the baby out instead of purple pushing. Okay, that's where you have nurses and doctors thinking that they need to coach you through pushing. Most of the time that happens because even if a woman isn't feeling ready to push, she's coached to push, like push 1, 2, 3, 10, breathe. They pop blood vessels in their eyes. They get tears down there, you know, 1st degree, 2nd degree, 3rd degree, 4th degree tearing. And a lot of the times it's because you can't feel how hard you're pushing. You don't know. So you have a higher likelihood of tearing. And plus, you're on your back. Okay, think of it this way. Think of trying to go poop from your back. Is that a normal position? Hell no. When you're giving birth, natural positions to help the baby down and out are positions that you cannot achieve with an epidural because you're strapped to a bed laying down, which, by the way, that position was invented by male doctors with the stirrups to help it be easier for them. It is the least mom and baby friendly position ever to give birth in. And you are more likely to tear because you're laying on your back trying to push a baby out. There's no force, there's no gravity. Like you can't squat, you can't bear down, you can't feel. So you have a higher likelihood of tearing or needing forceps or vacuum to get the baby out. And that position is all for the convenience of the doctor. Okay, that's an epidural. Then, so there's that. So look up the fetal ejection reflex. That only occurs most often, only occurs in physiological births. It's super cool. It pushes the baby out. You essentially wait until you feel that irresistible and your body just takes over. You don't even have to think about it and it pushes the baby out. I had that with my daughter. Amazing. The last thing is vitamin K shots. I do not personally, I decline the shots I decline them. There are some very serious side effects that I don't feel for me and my baby. I don't feel like they outweigh the benefits. I also don't feel like every single baby should have that. This was a discovery made in the 1960s. There's been very little research done since then. I mean, like none. And there also begs the question, why do babies have low vitamin K at birth? Like, obviously that's a natural protective mechanism, but like, why? Nobody knows that. So I opt for oral vitamin K instead. I will put the vitamin K links and resources and stuff like that down below that I've used for me to help make my decision. Now, keep in mind, lack of vitamin K does have very serious side effects. That's a real thing. Babies can bleed and hemorrhage, and there's some very real things that can happen with that. So this is something that you definitely need to look into. However, the research, it's a lot. And once you go down this rabbit hole and you start looking at things and you're like, why do we do this? Why do we need to do this? Just make the decision that's best for you, your body, your baby, and really take everything in. Like, are you low risk? Personally, if I were in labor for a super long time, if I was exhausted, if I needed to rest, I would probably go in to the hospital and I probably would have an epidural if needed to. Like, if my natural labor just weren't progressing for whatever reason and I needed rest, that's probably when I would go in there and weigh the benefits versus the risks. Like, if I've been in labor for like 16 hours or 20, like, and I just need to sleep, it's at that point that I would probably consider going in and just then trusting and believing for the best and hoping for the best. But that's not something that would be my first, that's not what I would rush to first. Same as Pitocin, same as vitamin K. I do the oral vitamin K. I always look for the natural solution first. And I'm not opposed to medicine or intervention. It just, there's got to be a time and a place for it. And that can't be our first line of defense. I believe that we as females especially, need to be the birth keepers and need to be proactive and preventative in our own health and responsible for our own experiences, situations, and outcomes. Okay, so that was a loaded video. I hope that this is kind of helpful. I hope you find some of the links down below helpful. Do your own research. Let me know, if you have questions. Hopefully I answered them all. But anyways, so thanks for watching. Please wish me all of the luck. I need it because I'm not like nervous to have a baby at home, but it's going to be a different experience. And I'm going to soak up all of the good vibes. Okay. All right, you guys, love y'all. Wish me an amazing last 2 weeks of pregnancy. The countdown is on. So I will be sharing and posting about that too. So, okay. Thanks for hopping on here, for listening to my rambles, and I'll see you in the next video.